episode of the Makery podcast. I am your host, Claire Goodale, and I am the owner, designer, and maker behind the crochet blog Makery. This week's episode is one that I am once again super excited about. We have one of my favorite makers who I love her style, I love her positive attitude, and she is just one of those influential makers in our community who is so inspiring to me and helped me get back into crocheting. You guys will all know her from her Instagram, blog, Pinterest, and all of her different social media things as Tony from TLYarnCrafts. She has such a chic and elegantly simple design style that is just amazing, and it has inspired some of my new garment designs that I'm super excited about. Today, she is going to be sharing with us her different Instagram strategies that she has on her social media accounts. And I am so excited to get to talk about this topic because social media and Instagram especially is something that is so hard to navigate and know what to do with. Do you schedule things? Do you not? Are you going for growth? Are you going for engagement? So Tony is here on the show today to share with us some of her tips on all of those things to help you guys feel more secure in your Instagram accounts and your social media. So let's give her a call and let's start talking. Hi everyone. I'm so excited that I get to welcome Tony from TLYarnCrafts on the show today. She's one of my favorite makers, and this is so exciting. So Tony, welcome to the show, and go ahead and just introduce yourself, share what your Instagram handle is, and kind of who you are and how you got started crocheting.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Claire. I really appreciate this. And it was a good excuse for me to get up and put on real clothes, put on my face today. So thank you. So I am Tony. I am the maker behind TLYarnCrafts. You can find me on Instagram, TLYarnCrafts. My website, TLYarnCrafts.com, blog is TLYCblog.com, also Pinterest, YouTube, all that good stuff. So basically what my business is it's part design, part education. Something that I learned about myself pretty early on in my maker journey was that I actually really like sharing with other makers. I never thought I would have liked teaching, but if it's something like crochet, I can totally get behind it.
Me too.
It's just so fun, and it's like, every day I learn something new, either about myself as a maker or about the craft and about different techniques. So I love the opportunity to either teach in person or via my YouTube channel or blog. So that's been really fun. But then like my number one love is design and really creating things from scratch, especially because I feel like we are in the best time for crochet and knitting and yarn arts in history. We have so many beautiful yarns, so much opportunity, so many different directions that we can go in, and that freedom to kind of explore and let yarn tell me what it wants to become is so inspiring. So I love the design aspect, and then the teaching kind of came second.
Yeah, I totally agree. I never thought that I wanted to be a teacher at all. Like, my mom was a kindergarten teacher for a few years, and she told me, never be a teacher, it's awful, which is funny because now I'm married to a teacher.
Yeah.
But I found like,
to do it, right?
Yeah, I found like I love teaching people too. I love like getting to share these techniques just to help people not be afraid of doing this, because it's something that anyone can really do. Anyone can do this.
Absolutely. And that's how I felt about it too, is like, you have to pave the way for people and really give them the access to the craft, because I think that's one of the challenges and stigmas with crochet is that it's hard to learn. Mm-hmm. And it's really not. It's not. Really, it takes a little bit of practice, and it does take having that access. So having somebody to teach you, or finding the right video, finding the right book. But once you have it, like things that seemed completely insurmountable, like amigurumi was foreign to me. Yeah. But watching a few videos and finding the right books and the right projects, I'm like, I can totally do this. Like, no big deal.
Yeah, I always have people who are like, oh, I can never have the patience to do that. How do you even do that? But
you find it. If you like it enough, you find the patience, you find the time.
Yeah, and I for one of my podcast episode that is going to be on Valentine's Day, I taught my husband how to crochet.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Oh, that'll be fun. I can't wait to see that.
he helps me film all my tutorial videos, and so he knows all the lingo, and he's helped
Yeah.
me like type up some of my patterns so I can work on other stuff.
Oh,
And so he knows all the stuff, but
uh-huh.
doing it's you're gonna really like it. It's really funny.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I told my husband for our anniversary 2019, I want to teach him how to crochet on camera.
Oh
So,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
yeah, maybe this
You
will
got
be the year that we all teach our husbands how to crochet.
yes, amen.
That'll
Cool.
be
Let's go ahead and jump into what we were going to talk about today and focus on, and that is Instagram strategy. I think that is one of the hardest and scariest parts about having a maker business is we're creative, so we don't necessarily like to plan. And Instagram is just this giant beast that we all absolutely love, but we're also afraid of it all the
yeah.
time. So
It's just a weird dynamic because I think kind of it's a sign of the times that we're in. Like a lot of us have the side hustle going on, or we have, even as our main business, we're being creative. So the idea of having to strategize our creativity feels weird. But I like to look at it like the more you plan for that kind of peripheral stuff around your business, the more time you have to do like the actual fun stuff. And that's how I incentivize it. Cause it's like if I can get my Instagram plan for a whole month or two and not have to worry about it, imagine how much time that gives me to crochet or to shop for yarn, if we're being honest. Because I almost feel like that's even more fun than actually crocheting sometimes.
oh yeah, I love like I walked into Hobby Lobby the other day and I was like I hadn't been in there for a while because I usually go to Joann's, but I was just like, okay, I will take all of this
All
and
of it. One of
I
them, please.
I don't know what I will do with it, but I just want it all and put it
Yeah.
on my yarn wall.
I love it. Yeah. I feel like going into a craft store after not being there for a while, you just kind of get swept up in just discovering what's new there. Yeah, it's fun.
You're like, how much money do I have in my bank account, I guess? And how
Right.
much can I
You're like,
spend?
do they have a coupon? I don't know. I
Yeah,
didn't
maybe got an email for that.
check.
So what are kind of like the kind of give us a definition or the basics of what an Instagram strategy is for people who've never done one or haven't even thought of doing one.
So, what I consider to be an Instagram strategy is the way that you go about achieving your Instagram goals. And all of our goals might look a little bit different. Some people are really looking for growth, whether it be through followers or number of comments, things like that. Some people are looking for true engagement. So, likes, comments, maybe reposting photos. And then some people are looking for kind of that growth outside of Instagram and really using it as a tool to guide people to their other platforms. So maybe getting people from Instagram to their blog or to their website. Everybody's looks a little bit different, and I am not here to judge what anybody's Instagram goals are, but definitely focusing on a strategy that gets you there. So you have that gratification of putting your time in to create a feed that achieves your goals.
Yeah.
So as far as strategy, I would say that my main goal is to guide people to my other platforms, because since I now do this full time, I have to focus on making sure I have a steady income
It's
because
so
I still
true.
gotta get paid. I still gotta eat. My cats gotta eat. Like, we have some work to do. So I use Instagram as a marketing platform for the other content that I put in places like my website or my blog. So as far as a strategy, I would say, definitely staying consistent in terms of the visual appeal of my Instagram feed, and then also the frequency with which that I post.
Yeah, I definitely, as I've researched Instagram strategy and all of that, consistency is one of the main things that people always say. You gotta be consistent because that's really, especially the algorithm really likes people being consistent and that
The
you post it like,
terrifying algorithm, man.
I
You
know,
could
right?
just like nail that thing down. It's like the closer we get to it, the more it gets, the further away from us that it gets, which can be scary because you hear a lot about that. And if you go to different blogs and you look on Pinterest how to grow your Instagram or whatever, you're going to find a ton of blog posts that talk about the algorithm. And what I like to say when I have platforms like this is worry a little less about the algorithm, because you didn't create it, you don't own it, you can't call Instagram and be like, what works best? Like, you got to just work with what you have
Yeah.
and kind of test different strategies to see what works for you.
Mhm.
So when I think about consistency, I don't post every single day. I don't post 7 days a week. I don't always post at the same time every day, but there are certain things about it that are consistent. I post the same 4 days a week. So you
Mm.
can always expect a post from me Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. I
Mm.
take my weekends to myself because we all need a break. And sometimes in the middle of the week, my brain is fried and I can't do anything else. So I give myself Wednesdays off as well. And you can always expect my photos to probably use the same filter. You can expect a lot of the same content, which every single one of my photos has yarn in it because that's what makes sense for me. Like, those are the things I mean by consistency. So
Yeah.
setting the expectation for your audience of what they can plan to see if they come to your account. So people have come to expect yarn and probably coffee and cats from me.
Yes.
If I all of a sudden like, that's who I am. That's what, and I'm happy about that because that's like
Yes.
95% of my life. So it makes sense. But if I all of a sudden started posting pictures of plants or like landscapes, people be like, what's going on? And that's what I'm going to see challenges with my engagement and with how I'm showing up in the algorithm. So
Mhm.
that consistency, whatever that means for you, is honestly what's most important. It doesn't mean every single day, and it doesn't mean always posting the same things, but having a variety that still includes kind of that core content.
Yeah, yeah. I really like the balance that you have of showing work in progress photos from or like beautiful yarn that you've gotten, and then also your finished designs. I think
Mhm.
it's good to have that mix because you're not being too salesy, you're not always like pushing your patterns, and I think you do a good job of getting your followers to engage with you
Mhm.
because like always asking questions. I've seen that when you ask questions of being like, hey, I'm going through this. Are you guys also going through this? Usually people are going through the same stuff or they're working on similar things. So they always want to share about what's going on in their lives, which is
Absolutely.
really, really cool about the community is that we're like, oh yeah, I also have a million work in progresses right now.
Right.
So,
Well, I'm also just watching that show on Netflix, or
oh
I
yeah,
also
yeah.
have opinion about coffee and tea. Like, we have so much in common
Mhm.
as a community. A lot of us, like, our experience is very similar. And I think those are the things that really draw us together and draw a community towards a certain account, is like, oh, I totally identify with that person because I just finished watching you on Netflix and I have mixed feelings. Like, there's there's a lot of those things, a lot of those similarities that we can kind of draw out of each other and really start to have those, as they would say, authentic
Yeah.
conversations, and really go from being, customer and business to being just like friends having a chit chat. And I think finding that balance between having conversations with my friends on Instagram as well as selling my product, finding that balance is really what's key. Like, that's what like opens the doors to making sure you have a sustainable business. um, because as much as I would love to have just a personal Instagram account where I just chit chat about what's going on through my day, like I said, I got to run this like a business.
Exactly.
So even when I'm planning out my Instagram feed, part of it is, where am I going to talk about some of the fun things and fun projects I'm working on, and
Mhm.
where am I going to focus on selling my product?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because I have to, gotta sell
Yeah,
it.
exactly. How do you go about like planning out or even kind of like the wording that you use to draw that you've noticed has helped to draw people to want to buy your products or like some tips on that? Because I know that I and a lot of other makers struggle with that. It's hard to go from switching from being like trying to connect with your followers, but
Mhm.
also being like, I have to do a business. So I need to also
Yeah.
try and sell what I make. So how do you go about that?
I think a lot of that comes in with the caption. So we draw people in with the visual of the actual photograph, whether that be a work in progress or a finished product, like you said. And then we engage with them through our captions. So if anybody Not that I'm suggesting anybody should, but if anybody wanted to analyze my captions, they have a pretty specific formula.
Yeah.
So they open up with something kind of short, maybe something a little funny, something engaging and kind of quippy. So I'm not trying to sell anything right off the bat. I'm just trying to draw people in, engage with them, get them interested in what else I have to say. And in the middle, I'm giving a series of information. So whether that be I've got a new pattern coming up, or this pattern's already released and here's where you can find it, or here's a new yarn that I'm working with. And then I always close my captions with a call to action. So that can be, go find this product on my blog or website, go check out this other account and find this yarn that I just totally fell in love with, or get ready for this activity that's coming up, mark your calendars. So I kind of have a formula that I use, and not only do I know that it's effective because it, you know, gets people to my other platforms, and I know that from my analytics, but also it's a way for people to connect with me. So even if they don't follow the call to action, they're looking at the other information in my caption and engaging with it through comments. So even if I don't get you today to go to my blog post or my piece of content, I'll get you eventually because you're interested in what I post on a regular basis. So I know it's going to come up for you.
Yeah.
So you have to play the long game. You have to like cozy up to people. And it's not just a, you know, give, sell type thing. That's not my only goal with Instagram. And I truly love a lot of the accounts and the makers that are on that platform. But it's really about finding that balance and making sure I'm using that time wisely. Because ultimately, Instagram is a marketing tool for my business. It's one of the ways that I get people to engage with the content that I create.
Yeah, I agree. I was listening to the Gold Digger podcast, and Jenna Kutcher was talking about how when you're doing an email list or Instagram or anything like that, making people like going and serving people with your products, serving people with your posts, that is something that really makes people feel loved and feel like you care. And just that having that balance of like, you want to be their friends and you want them to feel like you're like, because you are friends, and once they trust you and feel that, then you're going to get people to trust you with your products, and they're going to really want to buy your stuff because they're like, oh yeah, I love this person, of course I'm going to buy from them.
Yeah, because at that point, once they have that relationship with you, it feels less like you're selling to them and more like they're supporting you. And they feel good about that choice to say, I'm going to support this shop because I really like the person that's behind it, or I really connected with them in some way. So it's about creating an atmosphere where people feel comfortable parting with their money because they feel like the value of what they get is worth much more than they're spending. And that's the kind of atmosphere that we have to create. It's more than just the pictures and the captions. It's really about creating an experience and a feel when you're curating that Instagram feed.
Is there any like strategy that you use for Instagram and also designing, like that you are like, okay, around this time of year, I want to create these kind of patterns and have these kinds of posts?
Yeah, I will definitely say there is a strategy to it. It's not super time bound. It's really just about whenever I get those kind of spurts of energy. And that's why I walk around constantly with, I literally right this moment have notebooks literally littering my desk. Like they're everywhere, because whenever I kind of get this spark, I have to write things down because, as we all know, you'll get it 1 second and it'll be gone the next. So just the other day, I was thinking to myself of some patterns that I wanted to put out, because I have an idea of how many patterns each month I want to put out, how many I want to put out over the course of the year. And I've pretty much planned out my projects through about September. I try to leave the fall open because I want to get in on trends, and fall is really our like time to shine, I think, as crochet and knitwear designers. But pretty much through the summer, because February to about July, August can be a tricky time, especially for crochet. I think I feel like knitwear, it's a little bit easier to get away with, but with crochet, you have to be careful with the way that you design and the textures that you use. So my brain was just like, hey, we're going to jot all this stuff down and then we're going to slot it into the calendar because all of these types of projects are going to be relevant regardless of the time of year. So I think, how that kind of translates for other makers is just make sure that you're prepared for when your inspiration strikes. Be prepared to write it down. If you have like a voice recorder, if that's easier for you, whatever it takes to make sure that that inspiration it's not in vain and it doesn't just like go away. That's kind of my main tip with that.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned about how with like crochet designers having to be careful with certain designs or during certain parts of the year. What have you, like, especially during spring and summer, it's hard to create projects that aren't going to be like, oh, I want to get super cozy in this, but being more like, this needs to be more airy and summery. What are like some of the projects that you've seen that succeed really well during those spring and summer months?
Yeah. So what I've seen works especially well during the spring and summer is baby things. So maybe not like sweaters and things like that, but baby blankets, bonnets, some lighter baby wearables, anything for like amigurumi and little toys work really well in the spring and summer. I think especially for makers who maybe don't have a lot of downtime during the busier times of year, the summer is really where you take a respite and you do kind of those fun projects. So I find that baby things do really well in the summer. I find that lightweight shawls do well in the summer as well because people will make them, maybe they're going to make them in wool and then wear them in the fall because they take a little while to make, or they're going to make something in a nice cotton or a linen to wear to kind of cover up maybe at a bonfire or going to church or something. And then I've also found like really like lightweight beachy type cover up outfits or like cute tank tops, short sleeves, halter tops. Those things do really well in the spring and summer. I came out with a couple patterns last year. I had a beach cover up, a t-shirt and a halter top that came out last year, and those all did especially well. So just really being conscious of fit, of the material that you use, and then also making sure it's not something too complicated in the summertime. Because since you're not going for like cozy lived in, you're going for light, airy, easy to wear. You want to go for much simpler motifs and simpler lines in the summertime.
Yeah, like I really noticed like the really light and airy ruanas that just have like, all this drape to them. Those are like what my mind is always drawn to in the summer. Or like I loved your Rebel cami. That was so cute. And so it definitely has inspired me of like, oh, okay, I definitely noticing that trend of doing the tank tops, doing the halter tops, and especially seeing those on Instagram. I think that those are like, oh, okay, I can relate this to my life right now in this season. And
I mean, it's a nice time to be a designer too, because I think we can kind of redefine what people think of when they think of crochet, because people might think of summer crochet as being this like completely unwearable, like who even puts these colors together type designs, but kind of modernizing it a little bit, cleaning up the lines, even doing like really nice bold stripes and really looking at trends and ideas and working that into crochet, particularly during the summertime. I think we're uniquely positioned to really change people's minds about what crochet can do. And it's nice to have a platform like Instagram because you can do that visually in just a second. So even like the types of photos that I take from my finished product, I really focus on highlighting different parts of the garments or different parts of the design where people are like, oh, like that's not something that I was expecting to see from a crochet design specifically. And that's honestly one of my favorite things about Instagram, because you can really like just start to change the conversation and change people's minds just from like a single photograph.
Yeah, it's so true. I know for me, when like I learned how to crochet when I was 7, and then I like crocheted up until like I got like to college, and then I like took a break from it for a few years, and then when I started going on Instagram, started seeing how crochet was changing so much from when I had stopped crocheting. Like it's really taken such a dramatic turn in the past few years, thanks to like different makers that are out there, like you and Hookneck and like a bunch of those other women that are just creating these beautiful patterns where you're like, I thought you could only do that with knitwear. And we really are in that unique position of people are like, oh wow, that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
completely changing the industry. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. And with the yarns that have come out and the tutorial videos and strategies that we're all coming to learn, like crochet is about to take over the world. That's all I gotta say about
I agree. I love knitting too, but crochet always has a special place in my heart.
it. Definitely, it's the best. And that's part of the reason why, like, I know how to knit and I've considered doing knitwear design, but I just think there's still so much to explore when it comes to crochet. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick around with it for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I agree. I especially love how you kind of tie that knitwear design in with your Tunisian crochet designs. I like, you've got me inspired to learn how to do that. It's on my maker goal list for this year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it on the show. I'm gonna learn how to.
You got to do it now. We're gonna hold you to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how, like, with crochet you can also imitate knitwear. Like, you can't do that with knitting. You can't really imitate knitting at all, but with crocheting you can imitate knitwear, and that's awesome.
Which I love it. So it's like you almost don't even have a reason to learn knitting if you don't want to. Like you don't have to. But it is equally fun, and I don't want to seem like a knit bash or anything, because I love a good knit project, and several of my personal projects are knitted, but definitely think crochet deserves a lot more props than it gets most of the time.
Yeah, I think so. I know Anna and I from the Naughty Boss, we, in our interview that we did, we were talking about how we thought it was only for, like, people will just give it that stereotype of being only for grannies or people older. And then now in the past few years, it's really changed to be like, actually, no, you can do some really modern, amazing things with crocheting, and it's super cool.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. Like I've had my business of TLYarnCrafts since 2013. So we're going into just about 6 years in September. And it's been such a roller coaster, like such a change. I look at my first booth at a craft show, and it was very much that kind of old school granny, all this stuff's gonna end up at the Goodwill one day type. And just the changes that I've seen in the community and also in my own kind of design aesthetic, just in kind of that really short amount of time, has been insane. And I think a lot of it comes from platforms like Instagram, because we're impacting and inspiring one another. I might not have ever had the interest or the desire to change my aesthetic until I saw something else that I really liked, and got inspired by trying something different. So I think, I found my niche as far as like what I design and the type of customer that I design for. But there are so many different types of crochet and so many different aesthetics within it that there's really something for everyone. And I love following accounts that look nothing like mine, just to make sure I'm reaching all the corners of crochet that there are.
Yeah. When you do your posts, do you ever plan out your hashtags, or do you have a strategy for how you use hashtags in your photos?
I do. So I am one of those very lazy Instagrammers who like to just kind of have a note in my phone with the 30 hashtags that I use for the most part. I would say, out of posting 4 days a week, I probably only change those hashtags maybe like 2 days a week. And I found that, after a lot of trial and error, that these are the hashtags that work for me. And there's a lot of opinions about how many hashtags is the magic number. The way I see it is they let me use 30, so I'm going to use 30.
Exactly.
I don't see, like, what's the harm in using in being able to be found in even more searches, And I've never found that I've been penalized from using too many hashtags. So I use all 30 of them. But I will say, depending on the post, I'll go in and adjust some of them. So I would say about half of my hashtags are very like crochet and yarn arts focused. And then the other half are more focused on aesthetics. So it'll, like, one is like my beautiful mess, or one might be mornings like these or hands in frame or whatever it happens to be. So those are a little bit more generic. They're not super specific to my art, but they do have to do with the aesthetic of my photo because, of course, as people, we're interested in more than just yarn.
Yeah.
We follow I follow cat accounts. I follow meme accounts. I follow one account and like literally all he posts is like the inside of waves on a beach. Like that's his entire
Oh,
account. And I love it.
yeah.
So knowing that I'm interested in things outside of just my niche, I'm sure that there are people who have a very niche account themselves, but maybe are looking to follow other types of people. So I want to reach them as well.
Yeah.
So I just keep those hashtags in a note on my phone and copy and paste them to my account, switch out, a couple here and there, but I really try to not spend too much time changing my hashtags every day. It just takes forever.
Yeah, it's true. I know I am trying to still find out like what are those hashtags that I pretty much stay with the same ones.
Yeah.
But I definitely I try to switch them out almost every day, which I'm still
Mm,
trying to find that balance because I
yeah,
know that using the same ones on almost every day does help.
yeah,
Just helping more with that consistency as well.
definitely. Yeah.
Um,
I
and
think there's a lot of really easy ways to do some hashtag research and some things that I like to do every now and then. So I'd say probably every 3 to 6 months, I have several different tasks that I do to keep up with my social media. And one of them is to do some hashtag research. So I'll look at other accounts within my niche. I'll look at other accounts maybe within the broader arts category. I'll look at other accounts that are just kind of like pretty other influencers who are doing Instagram really well and maybe look at some of the hashtags that they're using. And then I'll also, of course, I have my branded hashtags. So I have like TLYarnCrafts, TLYC Makers, Crochet is Bay. I use those on a regular basis and kind of cycle those out. So I think it's really healthy to one, do that hashtag research and change out your hashtags every now and then. But two, also to have some branded hashtags so you can start kind of generating that community around yourself.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I definitely go and research hashtags based off of other makers that I see as successful and other people see as successful. Like I go on your account, Coco
Mhm.
Crochet Lee, and the Hook Notes to be like, okay, these women, I love their stuff and they have similar things to what I want to do. What are they using? And that really helps. I notice like using those hashtags that you guys have found successful also help me to be successful. And I think that's a really good tip for people. Like research the people that you love and see what
Yeah.
they're using.
Yeah, and there's no reason to recreate the wheel. Nobody should be out here trying to figure out brand new hashtags. That part of it, I really feel like is the strategy, and that's the
Mm,
like getting found in search and making sure you're doing the right things to get found in search. That's not the artistic side of engaging with Instagram. That's the purely business marketing side.
mhm.
So somebody could like completely copy and paste my hashtags. I am totally fine with that because we're both going to get found. Everybody's happy. Like
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any issue from, finding what works and implementing that in your own business. As far as things like your bio and those kinds of things, definitely put your own flavor on it. But hashtags, I mean, who cares, right? As long as it works. As
Yeah.
long as it works.
Yeah. Speaking about bios, how did you come about like the bio that you found? Okay, this is perfect for me. Because I know I've like sometimes like every month almost I
Mm,
might change it a little bit because I'm still trying to find that perfect bio that does draw people in and makes them be
yeah.
like, oh, I can relate to this person. So
Mhm.
what are like some ways that you have found have helped you and that you've seen from other people that you'd say, you probably shouldn't do
Yeah.
that?
Oh my gosh, we could talk about this all day. Okay, so I think one main thing to keep in mind when it comes to your bio, of course, is that your handle and your name are the only two things in your bio, well, aside from hashtags and mentioning people, which is new. But before you could put hashtags and mentions in your bio, the only way that you could get found in search based on your bio would be by your but by your blah, blah, by your name and by your handle. Sorry. So really being strategic about what your handle is because you want it to be really obvious to your niche and to the content people can expect. And
Yeah.
also using your name strategically. So maybe not just putting your own name, but also putting different words and language and phrases that people might be searching for so that you come up towards the top of search. So in my name on my Instagram, it says it has the word crochet, it has my name, it has my hashtag. So when people search those things, I come up pretty high ranking in search, which is nice. Now, of course, Instagram recently implemented being able to use hashtags and mentions in your bio, which is fantastic. So even more ways to get people to find you in search, which is awesome. But I think as far as a bio goes, I love it to be a little bit more conversational. So I drafted my bio around like who am I trying to attract? If this was a first impression, like I ran into this person on an elevator and I want them to be my friend, what would I say to them? So I'm telling them about my content. It's cats, crochet, and yarn. It's cats, crochet, and coffee. I'm telling them where I am, that I'm in Columbus. I'm telling them also where to find me on other platforms. So I'm being really specific with that call to action, like find patterns in my blog via this link. And then I'm also just kind of, making sure it's warm and fluffy and inviting, because that's, aside from my actual content, that's the first thing that people see. And I kind of use it like my doormat, like, come on in. I want to be super inviting in that way, but still being strategic about how I can be found in search with those, I think, 150 characters you can use in your bio. So really being thoughtful about that too. What is always a little disappointing is when I see people's bios where they try and like format them so everything's like centered. So you just end up losing a lot of characters. And all I can think to myself is like, what else could you have said about yourself that would invite me to follow you with all those characters that you've wasted with this pretty formatting? It's just, I don't know. I've never found it to be especially effective or useful to format a bio like that.
Yeah, I know. I've noticed that when I see a bio like all together, it just is like my brain is like, oh, that's too much to sort through. I've got to sort through all the things. Whereas I'm more of like, I like a good old fashioned list. Tell me, okay, this is part of me, part of me, part of me, my business. Okay, there you go. Right. That's who I am.
That's it. Like keep it really simple and really inviting. I think when people try to get a little too creative with that, it alienates some of your potential audience. I think the simpler, the better. That's really not an area where you want to overthink things like formatting and fonts. That's just not the place, I think.
Yeah, and it can be it's always so frustrating when you put all that effort into getting that formatting, and then once you copy and paste it into your bio, and then Instagram's like, sorry, you wanted this to be all the way over here. And you're like, no.
Ends up not working out anyway. So it's like, why waste the time? One thing I will say that made a huge difference, I think, when I reformatted my bio is I put a couple emojis in my bio.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I feel like those little pictures actually help to break up some of the text and makes it more readable. So I will say for somebody looking to reformat their bio, if they don't want to get real crazy, and not that you should, but don't get crazy with fonts and formatting, but like throw a couple like well-placed emojis, I think is really beneficial. And then also emojis can take the place of text. So an emoji will take one character, whereas a full word might take, up to 10, 15 characters. Like, so you can save a lot of space too.
Yeah, I know. And it's hard to find the balance with emojis of trying to like find one that kind of fit your aesthetic of your profile so that they kind of represent who you are. Because I think in mine, like I was just thinking about, I need to kind of reformat some of my stuff because I realized I always go through these stages where I realize things about who I am as a maker and who I want to be as a maker. And I was like, I really need to put something in there about creating patterns and resources to help other makers, because that's really my goal is and that's why I started this podcast, was to help other makers, because it's so hard to figure out stuff. And so I want to create, I like creating resources and tutorials and stuff. And so I definitely noticed I want to take out my huge chunk where I've got like a ton of emojis. Like I use other emojis, but I think I have way too many in my bio right now and need to kind of narrow it down.
Which can be hard. Emojis are just so fun. They're just so
much fun. Yeah, like I have in my like bio, like I love my husband, and then I have the math teacher emoji, and then
Well,
pizza, plants, and I think I put one other thing, but it's just fun to put emojis in there.
it is super fun, especially like since they redid all the emojis and added all of those extra little pictures. And I was like, oh man, I could use something. I could use all of these, all of them.
Exactly. Can I just have my whole bio be emojis?
I know. You know what though? People would be able to read it, I bet. You know,
I think so too. I think emojis becoming a language.
it really is. It really I love it. It's
Yeah, it's so true. I was also wanting to ask you, like, when you figure out how you want to create content for your Instagram, um, like you had mentioned, you like to do a lot of the photos with yarn and cats and coffee. Like, that's something you're very well known for. Do you try to find a balance between that and other photos, or are there any like photography tips that you have for people trying to plan their content out?
Yeah, I would say so I plan my content out pretty far in advance. I plan the concept, not necessarily like the actual photo, really far in advance. So I know conceptually what I want to post on a certain day. And what I try to do just to make it easier for myself is whenever I have yarn in my hands, I look for a photo op. So if I'm working on a new pattern or even kind of reimagining an old design, I will look for maybe 4 to 5 different ways right in that moment that I can capture this yarn event. And maybe I'll probably just use 1 or 2 of those images, but at least I have them in my camera roll to reference. Because I will say, while conceptually I have an idea of what I'm going to post each day, I might not have a professionally taken image to go with that concept. So I might just post a work in progress that I took on my couch with my phone in like half gone light, and I will filter the crap out of it until I make it what will work for me that day. I find that I got a lot happier and saw a lot more success in my Instagram when I just stopped overthinking it. So I stopped worrying that, the lighting is not perfect, the angles aren't great, or I was supposed to post a picture of my blonde cat as opposed to my black cat this day. Like, it's just not that serious. So I think planning ahead a little bit and really capturing as many moments as possible, just right in your camera roll, having a really good strategy for how you edit your photos. And I'm happy to talk about maybe some of the apps that I use. And then really just like kind of sticking to a manageable plan. Like I used to have a strategy before where I posted 6 days a week. I literally would set aside an entire day to take photos for Instagram. Didn't work. Just did not work. It was very extreme. And what I found was, one, I was really unhappy with that strategy because I felt like I was putting way more time into Instagram than it was giving me in return. And two, I wasn't even really I wasn't making great content because it was forced. So finding a balance where I'm enjoying my project and I just want to capture that moment as opposed to basically manufacturing my feed, like that was really the tipping point for me. So when I think about my favorite apps to edit, I'm gonna have to reference my phone really quick if you don't
I know.
mind.
I was gonna be like, please share.
I am happy to share. I am devolving all of my secrets right this second. So
I love like doing these interviews because I learned so much, and so I'm like, oh yay, okay, I get to go implement all this.
So I have 2 main apps that I use for editing my photos. And again, it was a situation where I had to really scale back because I used to use like 5 or 6 apps. You don't need. The main app that I use to kind of edit imperfections and really like fine tune my photos is Snapseed.
I use that too. It's awesome.
It's the most powerful app for free that you can find. Like I was using Lightroom before, I was using Facetune before, I was using all these other apps, but Snapseed seriously has all of those kind of tuning resources in one app. It's crazy easy to use. It's honestly
yeah, I know. I definitely, when I started using it, I was a little freaked out at all the stuff that you could do because I was using ViscoCam for a while, and like they've got great filters, but with Snapseed you can really zoom in, and then you can put more exposure on a spot, or you can really focus on the fine little details and then put a filter on it. And so that's definitely like my number one app that I use. And that's the only app I use for photo editing right now, because it's just so easy to use and you can do so much.
It's so powerful. Like it literally has everything. Like if you were only going to have one photo editing app on your phone, Snapseed would be definitely like my number one choice, hands down.
Yeah, and you don't want to pay any money for it.
Right.
Get all the pro
even
things.
Better.
Do that.
Definitely. And that's kind of my philosophy with Instagram. Like I feel like when I first kind of started getting my legs under me, I was buying a lot of apps and I was taking a ton of courses and all this stuff, but it was really overkill. Like it's just a matter of trial and error, find the apps that work for you, find the filters, stay consistent, all that good stuff. So when it comes to my favorite filter app, I have to go with Color Story.
Oh yeah.
That one is just like, I feel like the whole aesthetic of that app, and I don't use all the filters, but the aesthetic of the app really fits what I'm trying to create. So what's nice about them is, and this is one of the apps too that's really kind of evolved over time. It's really powerful. You do have to buy some of the features, but I personally think it's worth it. But it's got like, I'm sure somebody's counted, but it's got like a zillion filters. Like whatever feel that you're trying to create, if you want light and airy, if you want like dark and gloomy, if you want like really warm and rustic, if you want like neons and bright happiness, like whatever you're going for, they have it, or you can create it through maybe layering a couple filters. And what's nice about Color Story too is that you can adjust the depth of the filter. So some of the filters that I put on my photos, I'm using at almost 100%, and some I'm maybe using like 20-25%. So you can really fine tune the aesthetic of your photos. So, you know, again, if somebody really analyzed my feed, you can see where I changed filters.
It's true.
And it's pretty gradual. Like it's a small change, but you can draw a line with exactly like when I was using filter A to when I started using filter B. It can be pretty obvious. But you know, I feel like that's the kind of thing that evolves and changes over time, and that's okay. Like my feed, thank God, doesn't look like how it did in 2014 and 2015. You know, we're people and we make changes. We are constantly developing and finding what works. And you know, maybe during the winter I use a cooler app, and during the summer I use a warmer app. Like whatever.
Yeah, I know. Went back and looked at like my first Instagram photo that I did, and that was like 6 months ago, and I was just thinking, oh wow, I have changed a lot. Thank goodness. Like
right. It's like you're grateful to see that change, because you know you think of all the things that you've learned in that time, even just a few months time, and implementing those changes can make a world of difference so easily.
It's so true. It's so true. Do you use any apps for planning? Like, do you use one to plan out your grid the way it looks, or do you use one for scheduling? What do you try to do?
No, I tried it. And I found that it was honestly more work for me. So I have gone back to kind of an analog system. I literally have a wall calendar that I plan all of my Instagram on. That's it. Like I tried Unum, I tried like all of them. So many ones, because there's a lot of people that I love and respect in this maker community. We've had these conversations before and they've given me resources. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this planning app. No. I just try my best to make sure that my photos are cohesive, that I'm using similar filters, similar angles, similar like color palettes. So I know that for the most part, any two pictures that I put next to each other are going to look okay. I'm not using like neon pink in one photo and then like all gray in the following photo, because that's too much of a stark difference. I have a very specific color palette that I use within my business, and just kind of, you know, interspersing some different colors within that. But ultimately, I just try to make it so that all of my photos look like they belong in the same grid.
I've definitely been experimenting with different like planning apps, because I like the idea of being able to schedule it in time. But then that always then sometimes it's like that's a lot of work to try and
Mm,
figure
feels like
all of
it.
that out. And do you do you try to post at a certain time every day? Have you found that that kind of
Yeah.
helps you?
Yeah, that is definitely one thing that the rumors are true. When you find the right time to post, stick to that time. That is where you'll have the most success. So, and I'll tell everyone because it's different for everybody, I think. But
Yeah.
I post every day right around 4 o'clock. So my window is about 3:45 to 4:30. So the earliest I'll post is 3:45. If I forget to post, which happens a lot, but if I forget to post and it's like 4:45, I'll probably just skip that day. I won't even bother posting because I've found again through trial and error that posting closer to 5 o'clock doesn't yield really positive results for me, and I don't want to waste an image or waste a caption. I'd rather just save it for the next day.
Yeah.
So that's just another thing where you have to be prepared to do some trial and error. You got to be prepared for some days where maybe your content tanks, and then you find a day where your content does really well and try to mimic whatever you did on that day. Because I've got another maker that I talked to recently, and she said her prime time to post is 9:30 in the morning.
Mm.
9:30 in the morning would not work for me. I've tried it. My piece of content was like, it was like literally nobody saw it. I don't know why. I don't know why it happened, but like nobody saw it. So I went back to my 4:30, like 4 o'clock, 4:30. That's what works for me. So you got to
Yeah.
do a trial and error. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I found because I a few months ago, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go through my Instagram analytics and let's see what is the time that they always say my audience is more engaged or is coming on more. And I found it was always noon. So it's
Okay.
like my window sometimes can be between noon and 1, but I
Mhm.
try to stick around noon. But I kind of
Yeah.
want to experiment more too with posting more in the morning because in one of the engagement groups I'm in, everyone posts in the morning and
Mhm.
they all have super successful posts with that. So
So,
I want
yeah.
to try like that too. I think it's good to experiment and give yourself the
Yep.
freedom to do that because if you're just keeping yourself in these restraints of, oh, I have
Yeah.
to always do this, then you're losing kind of the point of Instagram, which is to connect with other people.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember too that like experimenting on Instagram is, if it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean like you'll never get your engagement back. Like you don't
Yeah.
break anything by trying something different. So, maybe you don't have great engagement today or this week, but once you get back in the swing of what works, like it'll come back. Like it'll be fine. I just feel like sometimes people overthink it and take it like way too seriously. But I think, we have to make sure Instagram kind of stays in its lane in reference to, the bigger picture goals that we have. So, I have a lot going on within my business. Instagram is one part of one thing that I'm responsible for, like creating content and then pushing it out through channels like Instagram, but not just Instagram. That's what I'm trying to achieve. So really finding what works for me and sticking to that formula really makes sense for me. And I'll like, experiment and change things around every now and then. But gratefully I've been on the platform long enough to find what works. But definitely for newer accounts or even people who are trying to reinvent their personas on Instagram, having that season of experimentation and playing around with different things is so important. And honestly, it can be really fun. Like changing filters for me on my photos is like one of my favorite things to do. This is like, oh, I didn't even know this filter was here. And this totally makes sense. Like, I want to try it out. So like, have some fun with it. I think that's, we really should be doing more of that.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed I was towards the end of the year, I was like, you know what? I love having pictures of myself on my Instagram, but also having the balance of my lips and stuff. And so I was like, you know what? I love seeing photos of yarn, so I want to really start shifting to having a balance between the two. And it's
Yeah.
so much fun to get to take photos of yarn and get to show, like, this is what I'm working on. And giving myself more of that freedom to have fun is definitely helping me enjoy Instagram even more.
For sure. It should be a fun platform.
Yeah.
I think remembering the social network part of this is it really helps you keep it in perspective. Like it's supposed to be about connecting with other people and creating genuine experiences and really like going beyond just the photographs. If
Yeah.
the goal is just the photographs, like you got to think bigger. Got to
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're approaching the end of our time together, but what are some last minute or like last tips and tricks that you want to leave with people, or just some advice that has helped you and want to share with other makers?
I think one of my tips for sure, and this is probably just to reinforce for some folks, if you want engagement, you have to give engagement. So not only replying to comments on your own photos, but taking time to find new accounts, comment like genuine comments, making really good relationships, following accounts that you actually like, not just, keeping your follower count low, but
Yeah.
make sure you're following accounts that you actually genuinely like and really shaking up Instagram. It's a crazy powerful platform. And there is so much inspiration even outside of just your niche. So really kind of expanding past that and engaging with other accounts. And then of course, I am a big advocate for self-care. And I think sometimes the best self-care we can do with Instagram is just putting our phones down. It is so easy to get stuck scrolling through your feed
Yeah.
or just like putting stories on autoplay or like constantly refreshing your DMs. Like I am guilty of it.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I think, really if we're taking care of ourselves and seeing Instagram as a tool, really being able to, find the time to put the phone down and connect with people in real life is super important. So really making sure you're taking care of yourself and having some boundaries around your social media too.
Yeah, my husband, he helped me like, okay, we are gonna have a rest day, and so Sundays are our rest day, and we'll go to church, and we'll just hang out together and enjoy each other, and that really helps me feel like, okay, now I've got the energy to be able to go through the rest of the week, and it is so hard because I feel like most of my friends are on Instagram, and so
On the weekends.
I'm texting them, but I definitely am also figuring out how I can do better. So it's definitely having breaks is something that we always forget, but is crucial to succeeding in this business.
It really is. And I think the time that we spend off of Instagram, that really intentional, creative time is what puts us in a good place to create content to put onto Instagram. So you really have to be able to unplug to be your best creative self anyway.
I agree. I love it. Thank you so much for all of the advice that you have given. I am so excited to see how everyone likes this, and it's one of those hard things that it's always good to know more tips and tricks on how to do it. And you have so much advice. I really enjoy getting to talk with you.
Yeah.
And I would love to do this again sometime and talk about another part of the maker business. It's been great.
I would love that, Claire. And thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a blast. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Have a great day, and I'll see you on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll see you on Instagram.
Bye.
Bye.
So I hope that you all enjoyed that episode. I know that I learned so much from Tony, and I'm so excited to go implement some of her strategies that she shared. I loved how she talked about that you don't need to take Instagram so seriously because sometimes that hinders you from creating good content because you're always trying to pressure yourself to create this content over and over again. So just remember to just enjoy Instagram for what it is as a marketing tool and especially as a social media platform to get to know other makers in the community. And just don't put so much pressure on yourself. I know that I need to do that a lot more because I put way too much pressure on myself. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. It's going to be a great one, and I can't wait to continue to get to know you guys through this podcast and share all of these awesome makers' advice with you on each episode of the show. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like it below if you enjoyed watching it, and hit the subscribe button if you never want to miss out a video from me, and also check out my other videos and tutorials on my channel. See you next time.